Now game week 22 is all said and done. I scored 51 points and I'm in 48k overall. And here is my team selection for game week 23. Right, now everything's finished, like I said, a quick counter through how my team got on in game week 22. I already went through quite a lot of this in detail on Monday when I made my transfer plans video. That was before Chelsea played, and to be honest, because I didn't captain him, it's a mental place to be in FPL, but when a player is really popular and you don't captain them, sometimes, even though they're in your team, you kind of want them to blank, and that was my scenario with Cole Palmer. And, well, to be honest, going into that game, Wolves being, well, the team that have conceded the most goals in the league so far this season, I think at the time they were at least, I was quite worried that he'd do well. So I'm really happy that, well, to see him score 2 points, which is entirely counterproductive, I know, because he's in my team. Sells, unfortunately, conceded a couple of goals against Southampton. I was quite disappointed by Nottingham Forest not keeping a clean sheet in that game. You know, if you were to tell me going into that week, what is the most nailed on clean sheet to happen? For me, it would have been Nottingham Forest at home to Southampton. It didn't happen. A 1-pointer for Sells, but I think, you know, with that good track record they have this season, to be honest, extending into last season as well, they were putting up really good underlying data from a defensive point of view last year. You know, I'm still happy to keep Sells. And Aina with an assist, obviously didn't get his clean sheet. I'll take the assist alongside Lewis Hall, who got an assist from a corner, and Anthony Robinson, who didn't get an assist this week, but Fulham did keep a clean sheet, and he ended up with a couple of bonus points. So all three of my defenders returning. Morgan Rogers against Arsenal. Yeah, he wasn't great in that game, but I think Arsenal, in my mind, set up to kind of nullify him. So I wouldn't be, and obviously Villa still got the result in the game, so I wouldn't be massively worried about Rogers going forward. And to be honest, I know there's been massive great performances, you know, hat-tricks from Ahmad and Cliver in, you know, successive game weeks at the same price point as Rogers. But I still believe that Morgan Rogers is the best midfielder, sub 6 million in the game. I'll stand by that. So whilst, yeah, he got a 1-pointer, shouted at the ref, called him some rude words, and got a yellow card. He's still in my team. Spoke about Palmer there. I feel quite fortunate to come away with a blank because I didn't captain him. An assist for Semenyo against Newcastle. Bournemouth looked really good in that game. And Cliver, I think, right now is the outstanding Bournemouth midfielder to go for. I don't have him, but also I don't think you can justify selling Semenyo for Cliver. And in fact, I'll talk about some of my, well, a move that I could potentially make this week, or a few moves I could potentially make this week, which, whilst he's been really good in my team, Semenyo could potentially be on the chopping block. A second blank in a row in the Premier League for Salah. Going back to the start of the game, we kind of captained him all over again. You know, I was not, I'm really surprised to see him blank in that game, to be honest. And again, I don't regret putting the armband on him. Obviously got his clean sheet, so you take that. Haaland with a goal. Question is, when do I sell him? And we'll talk about him in a second. Isak, unfortunate blank for him. Obviously, Newcastle got completely outplayed by Bournemouth in that one. So I'd say, yeah, Isak blank. But it was a bit of a surprise. And I think, you know, that's testament to the quality of that Bournemouth team, and particularly their defence at the moment. And then Chris Wood, who my OCD has just noticed doesn't have a shadow around him, with a goal and an assist. Actually should have been the best captain in my team in that game. I know I had a few people in my deadline stream chat leading into Game Week 23 saying I probably should have captained Chris Wood. In hindsight, though, I'd always go back to Salah. It just so happens that Chris Wood has got a goal and assist and outscored him. You know, I always felt that genuinely a goal and an assist is Chris Wood's like absolute ceiling. He doesn't really do much more than that. So yeah, I'm happy with that team though. You know, might have got the captaincy a little bit wrong, but I'm on 51 points. And I've actually, compared to where I was last week, got a green arrow and I'm in the top 50k. So I spoke about potentially selling Erling Haaland, and I'm essentially going to present two views that I could do with my team going into the deadline, because I'll be completely honest with you, and sorry to bottle it in my team selection video, but I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do with this team yet. Man City, I believe, is still to play in the Champions League tonight. So, you know, he could get injured, for example, and then that makes the move easier. And, well, if you're watching this video after that Champions League game has happened, you know, my decision might already be made. So his next 6 fixtures, actually, it's not just these 5, it's 6. He's got Chelsea, Arsenal, Newcastle, Liverpool. Tottenham's obviously not a hard fixture from an attacking point of view. And then after that, it's Nottingham Forest, which I would suggest are 6, you know, pretty ropey fixtures. It's just a case of Chelsea at home. Is it that bad of a fixture? And do I want to use the transfer now to get rid of him? And I'd sell him, with Game Week 24 in mind and wanting to load up on Liverpool assets. I don't have the projection of points like I do in my transfer plans video here, but I've got Salah. He's my only Liverpool player in the team so far. So I'm going to need to bring in one, maybe two additional Liverpool assets. And I've categorised them over recent weeks in terms of where I rank them in terms of their quality of assets in FPL. And my opinion, controversially some might say in the comments, my opinion is slightly changed, I would say. I've got a good and okay category of players I think are all genuinely pickable, but I've tried to separate the ones that I'd actually want to go for. In terms of the good assets, I think obviously Mo Salah, no question, he's got to be in your team I think right now, especially with the double in mind. Arnie Slot, if you want to use your assistant manager, I think is a good pick. Trent is a good pick. I think with the way the games fall for double Game Week 24, it does seem likely, because I believe there's a cup game mixed in. I believe he probably starts both games of 24. I was a little bit concerned maybe a couple of weeks ago, or right up into my last video to be fair, of his likelihood of starting both games of the double, but my confidence there has gone up a little bit, I think. And then you got Cody Gakpo, who I've put in both columns because I'm a little unsure about him, but I do think he's probably the best of the rest. Like in terms of the other Liverpool attacking players, right now I think Cody Gakpo is probably favoured by Arnie Slot. Not saying that, well, that's probably not even the right comment to say whether he's favoured by Slot or not. I just think he's probably going to get the most minutes. But you've got Jota, Darwin Núñez, who's obviously scored his brace in Game Week 2022, would have impressed Arnie Slot in that game for sure, and Luis Diaz as well, who are all competing for those positions. So yeah, it does make it quite tough in my mind to pick Gakpo, because one of the things I like to do in FPL is pick players that have pretty much guaranteed minutes. But I think with the fact they've obviously got the double game week, he could still be a strong option. So that's kind of where I'm thinking of going with Liverpool assets. So in terms of my defence then, I'm going to go Sales, Hall and Aina, definitely. These three are not leaving my team at all. And it's just a question of, do I bring in Trent this week? I've got Robinson, who's got Man United at home, who, you know, I'd say he's got a sort of chance of a clean sheet. I do imagine Man United probably score in that game. But he has been good this season, and it's not the worst fixture in the world to start him for, I don't think. But you can see there on my bench, I've got Colwill, who's got a potential injury, and I just don't rate him at all. So to be honest, I could sell Colwill, bench Robinson. I could sell Colwill for Trent, of course. That's the Liverpool player I want to get in. Sell Colwill for Trent, bench Robinson, and start Trent. That's kind of where I'm thinking of going. Oh, by the way, I haven't mentioned it yet. I've got 4 free transfers to use, right? But the question is, do I use the transfers early to bring in the Liverpool assets ahead of when I'd actually want them, with the view that the transfers will be worthwhile because they'll score the extra points? That's the decision that I've got to make. So it's essentially a shootout in my mind between Trent and Robinson as to whether it's worth the early transfer on Trent, or I just roll the transfer and bring him in next week ahead of the double and just keep Robinson for Man United. So I mentioned, you know, potentially selling Haaland, allowing me to upgrade elsewhere. I think the one player in my midfield, if you just look at the points I got to show my midfield so far, the one player in my midfield that could potentially go, not saying that I'm really unhappy with him, I just think I could do better. I could potentially sell Semenyo for either Gordon or Mbeumo. You know, the cash I'd save from selling Haaland would allow me to do that. Picking between these two, though, my God, is really, really hard. I'd probably, to be honest, if I make these transfers, I will flip a coin on my deadline stream to decide between them. I go back, I always try and think of what my gut instinct is telling me to do with FPL transfers when it's this close. And whilst Anthony Gordon's form has been absolutely sensational in recent games, well, obviously apart from the Bournemouth one, I just really like Bryan Mbeumo. I think the fact that he's on penalties, and I would give Brentford the edge in terms of fixtures sort of over the period that I'd look at to make a transfer decision. So Gordon's probably slightly better from open play, but Mbeumo I think has the quality of fixtures and he's got penalties. So I think with that in mind, if I do make the move from Semenyo, I would probably favour Mbeumo right now. And just looking at the rest of the team, I mean, Rodgers, West Ham, Wolves and Ipswich in his next 3. And comparatively with Semenyo, well, to be fair, when you get past Game Week 24, well, they've got Southampton and the fixtures get quite good for Bournemouth. Obviously, Southampton away and so on and so on. But the next 2 are Nottingham Forest and Liverpool, which are probably 2 of the hardest fixtures you could possibly ask for. But they are at the Vitality. I think it's still called the Vitality, isn't it? The Bournemouth stadium. They are at home. So yeah, it's just a close one, and it all stems around selling Erling Haaland, basically. But I could potentially bring one of those guys in, likely in Mbumo for Semenyo. Like I said, Roger's got good fixtures. Palmer, yes, he's got Man City away, but I mean, come on, you wouldn't rule out Palmer doing something against Man City. And then Salah's got Ipswich at home, the double game. There's no way I'm getting rid of Mo Salah. So that's my midfield if I make no transfers. Obviously, thinking about doing Semenyo potentially to Mbumo. So I spent, obviously, a bit of time talking about a potential scenario of me selling Erling Haaland. And if I were to do that, I think there's two potential players I could look to bring in. I go for, again, I spoke about him quite a lot when going through the Liverpool assets. I go for Cody Gakpo, who I think is probably the best of the rest of the Liverpool attackers that aren't Mo Salah. Or I go for the tried and trusted Wissa, which would probably end up with me on a Brentford double up. I would have added Solanke in that list, even though he's not absolutely torn up trees this season. I really did like him as an option, but with that injury, he's going to be out for a little while. There's no possible way I could bring him in. Mateta could potentially be an option too, but I think I just prefer Wissa, and I do like the fixtures that Brentford have got coming up. I do really like him as a player. The one thing that does sort of put me off Wissa is the fact that Nottingham Forest are sniffing around him. They're looking at either, I think the transfer rumours yesterday were Cunha and Wissa to potentially sign. Now for me, just on a sidebar, I'm not sure how good of a signing Wissa would be for Nottingham Forest. And to be honest, if I was Wissa, I would probably stay at Brentford. He is the nailed-on, well, should be the nailed-on number 9. The team play to his strengths. Whereas if he's signed for Forest, you know, he's probably at the moment going to be behind Hudson-Odoi and Elanga and Chris Wood in the starting line. The move doesn't make sense for me. Whereas Cunha, I think, does make sense for Nottingham Forest, whereas Wissa less so. So with that in mind, he's probably the other standout option alongside Cody Gakpo, but it is obviously important to keep in mind that transfer rumour, and it does kind of put me off picking him, and I think strengthens, you know, the reason to take a risk on Cody Gakpo, even though he's got limited minutes. That double, Ipswich in 23, and Wolves after that, you could keep him for a few game weeks. It does look pretty tempting. Right, so again, forward line, if I do nothing, Isak, Haaland, Chris Wood. And I've just made the argument potentially for selling Haaland and the players I could bring in. But now is the time to make the argument to potentially keep him. So he's got Chelsea at home, which I don't think is actually that bad of a fixture. And when you compare them, I think, like for like, Haaland against Chelsea at home versus Wissa. Let's just go back. If I change him for Wissa, who's got Crystal Palace away, Gakpo's got Ipswich at home. I think with Haaland's pretty much guaranteed 90 minutes, his penalties, and the fact, to be fair, that Man City are playing quite well from an attacking perspective at the moment. They're just beating Ipswich 6-0. I might have egg on my face there after their game in the Champions League. But, you know, I could quite easily keep hold of him. And I think in a straight-out shootout for Game Week 23 in isolation, I was closing my eyes to think about what I was saying there, I think Haaland edges it over Gakpo. And it's just the thought of, is it worth selling Haaland to make that move, to then upgrade Semenyo to Mbumo and change Robinson for Trent and kind of get those players in early for 24 onwards? The only thought in my mind about bringing players in early before I actually need them is the potential for them to get injured. Whereas, you know, they are sort of luxury transfers, which if you watch me regularly, you would know I don't like to make. But they are, I would say, upgrades on who I have. But for me, it's so close as to whether it's actually worth making the transfer. Because Robinson and Semenyo, yes, you know, their fixtures are not great. I wouldn't absolutely rule out Semenyo doing something against Forest. But I guess I am starting double Forest defence. And then Robinson, you wouldn't be completely surprised to see them keep a clean sheet against Man United. And based on how he's been getting attacking returns recently, you wouldn't be surprised to see him knock in a couple of assists. So I'm really torn on what to do with my team right now, to be completely honest with you. I think I need a couple more days of just hashing things out and thinking about it as to where I go. But I think I've narrowed it down to two options now. My transfer plans were a bit loose in terms of who I could potentially pick in my team. But I think it's whether I make the transfer or not now, not necessarily the players I bring in. And I'll just show you, this is how my team would look if I did make those moves. Give me, I had to like spread the bench over a little bit because Gakpo's expected points shape was a bit too big. So I bring in Trent, I bring in Mbumo, and I bring in Gakpo. That leaves me with one free transfer going in. Well, I'll have two for Game Week 24. I'll have one spare. 2.5 million in the bank. And the team, I think, does look better. It's just, is it enough better, if That's not very good English, but you know what I mean. That the transfers this week are justified rather than just waiting till next week. So yeah, all of that is going on in my mind at the moment in order to decide on what I do with my team. But those are the two scenarios that I could go for. And I was going to pause there, but actually, Salah's the clear captain, right? I don't really think I need to spend all that much time talking about Salah. Isak, you could go for Isak against Southampton away, but I'd be a little bit put off by... I don't think Newcastle are as good away from home as they are at St James's Park, and they've just been absolutely battered by Bournemouth, so that would just put me off a little bit. And Salah scored in the Champions League last night on Tuesday. Ipswich at home is a great fixture. I think Ipswich have their way of playing football now, and they'll really go into that game, I think, wanting to get a result. Trying to get a result. I don't think they'll sit back and soak up all that much pressure. So that's just my mind. Your opinion might be different. I think I'm going to go for Salah. And the final thing is just going to be about the assistant manager. I've been blabbing on about this in recent videos about potentially using the assistant manager on either Arne Slot or David Moyes, and then if Tottenham and Fulham have a double game week in 25, switching it to them. But I've had, I'm never afraid to say I've changed my opinion. I think I'm entitled to change my opinion. I'm a little bit put off from using it now. I don't know. My excitement to use it in 24 has been just put down a little bit. Yeah, the points potential is there. And to be honest, with a double game week and the chips that I have remaining, it is probably worth using one. But I don't know. I'm just not full of excitement about using it for Game Week 24. I think it could well be used in later points in the season. And I have a feeling that the likes of Crystal Palace, West Ham, maybe even Wolves, who are quite low in the league at the moment, they could end up playing big teams towards the end of the season who are sort of on the beach and pick up points like wins or draws, which means a lot of points for their managers and maybe the best opportunity to use the assistant manager chip. I'm still seeing it as an opportunity to be used in 24. I am just not quite as keen as I probably was on Monday. I don't know what's happened over the last couple of days. I think maybe my excitement to use it has died down a little bit, but I just thought I'd update you on my thoughts there. All right, well, that's the end of the video. I'm sorry that it's not entirely definitive, but it's honest. I'm not decided on what I'm going to do with my team yet, but I have narrowed it down a little bit from my team, transfer plans video. I had lots of potential transfers I could make, lots of options that I was thinking about, but I think I've nailed it down to those two options. So it's just roll or make 3 transfers: Haaland to Gakpo, Semenyo to Mbumo, and then Colwill to Trent, bench Robinson. So those are my sort of thoughts and decisions I've got to make. If you actually want to see what I do with my team, I'll be live for a deadline stream starting sometime Saturday morning. There'll be you'll see that scheduled on my channel soon to catch that. So yeah, that's where inevitably I'll actually make the final decision on my team. So if you enjoyed that video, please leave me a like rating. Let me know in the comments what you think I should do with my team. If you think those 3 free transfers are worth making this week, or if I should just roll and carry on as I am and make them next week. That's the decision to make. But if you haven't already and enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the Golden Goal channel, which should be just there on your screen. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in my next video.